You may have noticed this year, flagship phones with large cameras aren't just stacking specs, they're focusing on practical usability. Now, the emphasis is on both internal and external quality, making sure features are useful and sufficient. For example, 2 years ago, a 1-inch main camera sensor was the hot feature for big flagships, but now it's seen as too bulky and cumbersome. A sensor size of about 1/1.3 inches is now the main camera sweet spot. For ultra-wide lenses, being adequate is enough. Periscope telephoto lenses still compete on high pixel counts, with 3 of 4 major Chinese Android brands now using 200 megapixel sensors. Both Vivo and Honor use 1.4-inch sensors at 85mm, while OPPO uses a 1.56-inch sensor at 70mm. Xiaomi, however, has only a 1.2-inch sensor at 115mm. So, among the new Pro models from the 4 major Chinese Android brands, OPPO Find X9 Pro, vivo X300 Pro, Honor Magic8 Pro, and Xiaomi 17 Pro Max, which is the new king of flagship imaging? Let's first compare the objective metrics measured by our imaging lab. We continue to use our German IE equipment, simulating and calibrating lighting conditions with a fixed light box, then testing with different standard charts, and finally analyzing the data. Here, we use the Siemens star chart to measure resolution. Xiaomi, Vivo, and Honor all performed basically the same in both strong and weak lighting, reaching the limit of their default resolution. I noticed that OPPO's numbers in strong light are especially high, almost to an unbelievable extent. At first I thought there was a bug or a measurement error, but after checking the test materials I realized, wow, it was outputting at over 50 million pixels. That's odd, since we used the default settings for all the tests and didn't select a higher resolution. Later, I realized that on the Find X9 Pro, the default camera format setting is Ultra HD Priority. In well-lit and detail-rich scenes, it will automatically shoot high-resolution photos, resulting in higher output resolution and naturally a higher limit for image detail. It's just that simple, direct, and effective. Other brands can take note of this approach in the future. As for color saturation, we use the T142 standard chart for testing and analysis. Here, Xiaomi and Honor default to a low saturation style, while OPPO is close to neutral. Only Vivo tends to be slightly higher in strong light with more pronounced saturation. However, compared to its previous high saturation, bold style, Vivo has become much more restrained now. Looking at the detail reproduction capability measured with the T1276 chart, all 4 brands perform decently here. However, Honor actually does better than the other 3 in low light conditions. You can pay attention to this in the sample analysis section later. Here are the shading and noise VN results for brightness uniformity measured with the T1255 and T1270 thin plates. In the era of computational photography, these 2 metrics are actually not that important, so we won't go into detail here. Let's move straight to the sample photos. During the day, when lighting is good, the OV sensor needs 4 stops of exposure compensation. Each has its own style. There's no absolute good or bad. It depends on personal preference. Let's focus on the key point and zoom in on detailed areas like these leaves. Vivo applies the strongest sharpening. When you zoom in, it can even feel a bit harsh on the eyes. On the other extreme, OPPO's sharpening is the most subtle in terms of visual perception, so it looks a bit softer, and the overall look is better if you don't zoom in. This is also the algorithmic style OPPO has stuck to in recent years, aiming to reduce the digital feel. Honor and Xiaomi fall somewhere between these two. Also, Vivo tends to be overall brighter, which makes the image look a bit less layered. OPPO does a pretty good job with light and shadow, especially in darker areas. They're willing to let those parts stay dark, which makes it more true to life. The light and shadow contrast in Xiaomi and Honor photos looks a bit more layered, especially with the Honor Magic8 Pro in this generation. The improvements in handling these details are actually quite noticeable. When we get closer, it's actually Xiaomi that starts to lose control a bit. The color saturation gets much higher and can feel a bit overwhelming. In comparison, Honor's greens look crisper and more natural. OPPO's greens are still on the lighter side. Zooming in on the leaves near the eyes, Vivo is still the same as before. OPPO still has that digital look, kind of soft and lacking in detail. In this scene, Xiaomi cranked up the intensity, making the image look a bit dirty. Honor also enhanced it, but to the naked eye, it looks more natural and comfortable. Looking at the light passing through the gaps in the leaves, Honor and Xiaomi handle it better. OPPO and vivo struggle to control the highlights at the edges. OPPO even shows some ghosting, which feels like the multi-frame synthesis wasn't done properly. Even after taking several more shots, this issue still occurs. However, in these next sets of samples, OPPO automatically activated the high-resolution mode, and when you zoom in on the details, it's like magic, completely dominating the competition. For example, look at these residential buildings in the distance, this office building, and the trees blocking the view. The advantage of high resolution is very obvious here. Although vivo, Xiaomi, and Honor can also manually enable high resolution mode, when you zoom in to look at the details, OPPO's advantage is still more apparent. At night, the scene demands even more processing power, so OPPO rarely activates the high-resolution mode. At this point, all four brands basically continue their daytime performance. Aside from some differences in overall color tendencies, when you zoom in on the trees here and the light spill above, vivo is still the one with the most aggressive algorithms. Looking at the building facade on the left, as expected, vivo's lines appear clearer. OPPO doesn't deliberately brighten the dark areas, staying true to the actual look. Honor falls somewhere between vivo and OPPO, and this level is just right. There's a certain balance between detail and overall appearance. As for Xiaomi, the details are a bit lacking. On the building surface, both color boundaries are blurred. Now, moving on to a more challenging scenario, this shot is taken directly facing a street lamp, with all phones manually focused on the light. Looking at the leaves illuminated by the lamp here, OPPO and Honor are a bit clearer. However, OPPO is slightly overexposed. On Honor's side, the texture of the warm light is restored, giving a better overall look. All feature a triple camera setup, a wide main camera, an ultra-wide, and a periscope telephoto lens. OV offers telephoto at 3, 3.5, and 3.7 times. Switching between the cameras is smooth, with no obvious drop in image quality. Only the Xiaomi 17 Pro Max aims for a longer telephoto reach with a 150mm 5x zoom. With a longer focal length, it's not possible to use a large sensor and keep the device compact. For zoom under 5x, the main camera handles the zoom, causing a more noticeable drop in image quality than the other three brands. This is especially awkward for night shots between 3 and 5x zoom. We've also tested the telephoto's data metrics and resolution, which confirms my earlier point. The native telephoto lens on the Xiaomi does have slightly weaker resolution. Vivo and Honor, with their larger sensors, achieve higher performance in other metrics as well. I've compiled data for the four main metrics: saturation, delta C, brightness uniformity, shading plus noise, VN, and detail restoration for everyone. If interested, take a screenshot to save or review, or check more detailed data on our mini program with the same name. Now let's directly look at the native telephoto sample shots. It's important to note that the focal lengths of the four telephoto lenses are different, so the framing range will also vary. We're still looking at the same scene with the big rainbow bridge and the trees. Here, both vivo and Xiaomi have a bit of red oversaturation. Honor leans toward higher saturation, but it's not glaring, actually a bit more comfortable than vivo or Xiaomi. OPPO keeps its calm, gentle style, focusing on detail when zoomed in. OPPO's processing is more subdued. It doesn't catch your eye at first, but it's less tiring to look at for long periods. Honor offers better balance here, while Xiaomi's processing is a bit more restrained. Also, OPPO's telephoto lens will automatically trigger high-resolution mode. When zooming in on distant buildings, OPPO does provide richer detail compared to Xiaomi, Honor, and vivo. However, its approach to light and shadow doesn't quite fit this sunset scene, in my opinion. The overall backlit cityscape is darkened, which affects the viewing experience. I think vivo and Honor handle the light and shadow more appropriately here, and the atmosphere is better as well. Xiaomi, on the other hand, is at the opposite extreme. The overall tone of the scene feels a bit heavy, and brightening up the entire ground makes it a bit overwhelming. Here, I also want to point out a long-standing issue with Xiaomi's imaging. The algorithms tend to be inconsistent. When you switch to a different scene, the style of the photos can be completely different, unlike OPPO and vivo, which have a more systematic and consistent style. I remember Honor used to have a similar problem, but with this generation, the Magic8 Pro has made significant progress. The style is now much more consistent. For example, in these sample shots, the way it handles highlights and shadows in backlit scenes is even a bit more realistic and harmonious than Vivo. Switching to nighttime scenes, all four brands perform roughly the same as they do during the day, and both Eye and Honor have an advantage with larger sensors. However, Vivo tends to over-sharpen details, while Honor's details look a bit more natural. Xiaomi's telephoto sensor is relatively small, so it's at a bit of a disadvantage in terms of image quality. However, since the telephoto lens can shoot from farther away when you zoom into the same spot, there actually isn't a huge difference compared to OPPO. OPPO's 156-inch sensor is quite good, but its image processing is more conservative than the other three brands, so nighttime details are lacking. Also, the 70mm focal length is a bit short, so compression isn't as strong as with Vivo, Xiaomi, or Honor. Telephoto lenses are also great for shooting portraits. Here are low-light portrait shots taken with 3x, 3.5x, 3.7x, and 5x native telephoto lenses. Which one do you think looks better? Another advantage of large sensor telephoto lenses is that the bigger sensor allows higher image quality. Here we've standardized everything to 10x zoom to compare night scene performance. As mentioned, OPPO is at a disadvantage in night scenes due to its smaller sensor, but surprisingly, Xiaomi, shooting from farther away, delivers better detail. The benefit of a larger sensor is even clearer with Vivo and Honor, as seen in this building shot from Vivo. Honor's shot of the railings and Vivo's shot of the bridge. The vehicles by the roadside in Honor's photo, these two go back and forth in different scenarios. OPPO Find X9 Pro, Vivo X300 Pro, Xiaomi 17 Pro Max, and Honor Magic8 Pro, the new generation of the four major flagship Android phones from China. Which one is truly the king of imaging? This video may still not be able to give a definitive answer, but you can see that OV, Xiaomi, and Honor each have their own persistence, compromises, and improvements this year. The Xiaomi 17 Pro Max is positioned as a more balanced flagship, with the Deco secondary display on the back becoming its unique selling point. Its market sales and loan rates speak for themselves, but this year its flagship imaging doesn't have any particularly outstanding strengths. While other brands have adopted 200-megapixel sensors, its periscope telephoto remains unchanged. Compared to competitors, there's still room for improvement. The OPPO Find X9 Pro switched from 4 to 3 cameras this year, removing the ultra telephoto for a simpler setup. The new design feels better in hand, selling points are more balanced, and the telephoto is now 200 megapixels. It also features a Danxia True Color lens, and its actual daytime performance is quite good. The image quality is mainly about being sufficient, while color and light rendering have always been OPPO's strengths, prioritizing visual experience. Vivo's philosophy towards imaging is all about power and specialization, and this time the X300 Pro is no exception. It uses 2 dedicated image processing chips. Even though it's the standard flagship model, both the imaging hardware and software are fully equipped, and the results are impressive. In the future, if Vivo could refine its algorithms a bit more, it might be even better. This doesn't affect its place among top flagship imaging smartphones. This year, Honor Magic8 Pro comes with strong hardware. In tests, battery life and performance impress. It has dual 1280-16 speakers and is the only one to combine 3D ultrasonic fingerprint with 3D facial recognition. What surprised me most was its improved imaging capabilities. Its hardware has pushed it into the top tier of flagship models. With a solid foundation, plus more stable algorithms and imaging engine, it stands out even more. The photos it produces, both in terms of image quality and texture, have improved. Plus, with the 200-megapixel large sensor and impressive night photography from the telephoto lens, I think this year the Honor Magic8 Pro has finally made it into the top tier of flagship phones for imaging. For more real-world test data, feel free to follow our mini program with the same name. See you in the next episode.